I never imagined that one dinner could expose so many hidden truths. That night, as I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the simple black dress I had chosen, I felt something inside me, a quiet unease I couldn't name. It wasn't nerves, it was instinct, the kind that whispers, something's about to happen. Marcus had insisted that I join him and his wife, Simone, for dinner with her parents, Franklin and Veronica. He said it was important that they wanted to get to know me better. I smiled when he said that, but deep down I knew what it meant. They didn't want to know me. They wanted to measure me. When we arrived at the restaurant, everything was shining, gold cutlery, crystal glasses, and that polished air rich people carry like perfume. Franklin stood to greet us, his smile stiff and practiced. Veronica, elegant and cold, scanned me from head to toe as if pricing my clothes in her head. Throughout dinner, I noticed it, the small comments disguised as jokes, the polite smiles that hid contempt. "So, Marcus," Veronica said sweetly, "you never told us your mother worked in finance without owning her own firm. That's impressive." Her words sliced through the air. Simone laughed lightly, trying to ease the tension. But the damage was done. I stayed calm. Years had taught me how to smile through humiliation, but Marcus's eyes kept darting between me and them, silently pleading for peace. I wanted to protect him from that storm, but every word they said made it harder. By dessert, I realized something. They didn't see me as a person. To them, I was a background character in their daughter's story, someone from a different world. I had faced judgment before, but never from people who were about to become family. When Franklin casually mentioned, "It's important for our grandchildren to be raised in a stable, cultured environment," I finally understood. This wasn't dinner. It was an evaluation. I smiled, placed my fork down, and said softly, "You're right, Franklin. Stability is everything, especially when it's built on respect, not arrogance." The table went silent. For the first time, Veronica didn't know what to say. Marcus froze. Simone's eyes widened, and I knew right then that dinner would change everything. What happened after that silence would expose who everyone truly was, and it wasn't pretty. The silence that followed my words could have been cut with a knife. Veronica's hand froze mid-air, her wine glass trembling slightly. Franklin's polite smile melted away, revealing the annoyance he'd been hiding behind. Charm. Marcus tried to laugh it off. "Let's not turn this into a debate," he said, his voice tight. But it was too late. The damage was done. I had crossed an invisible line, the one rich people draw around their pride. Veronica leaned forward, her voice coated in fake sweetness. "Of course, respect is important, but some people confuse humility with mediocrity. You understand, don't you, dear?" Her words burned, but I didn't flinch. Years of struggle had taught me one thing. People like her mistake silence for weakness. I smiled and replied calmly, "You're right. But I also believe that sometimes people confuse wealth with worth." Simone inhaled sharply. Franklin's jaw tightened. Marcus lowered his gaze, pretending to focus on his plate. For the rest of the dinner, I barely spoke. I just observed. The way Veronica bragged about her charity work while judging the waiter's accent. The way Franklin spoke about family values while dismissing everyone who didn't share his background. It was all a performance, a play where love was currency and appearances were everything. When the check came, Franklin insisted on paying, of course. "My treat," he said, as if generosity could erase cruelty. I thanked him politely and stood up. "It was a pleasure," I said softly. And maybe, in a strange way, it was because I had finally seen who they truly were. In the car ride home, Marcus stayed silent, gripping the steering wheel too tightly. After a while, he said, "I'm sorry, Mom. They can be difficult." I turned to him. "No, Marcus. Don't apologize for them. Just promise me one thing. Don't ever let them make you feel small." He nodded, eyes wet. "I won't." When I got home, I removed my jewelry, washed my face, and looked at my reflection in the mirror. I didn't feel angry, just sad. Sad for Simone, for Marcus, for anyone who believed love had to come wrapped in approval. That night, I went to bed knowing one truth. Sometimes silence keeps peace. But truth sets you free. The next morning, I had no idea that my silence wouldn't last long because fate had already planned the next confrontation. The next morning, I tried to shake off the heaviness from that dinner. I made coffee, opened the curtains, and told myself to focus on work. But sometimes peace doesn't last, especially when truth has already been spoken aloud. By noon, my phone rang. It was Marcus. His voice sounded off, that tight. Hesitant tone children get when they're caught between love and loyalty. "Mom," he began, "Simone's parents. They called me this morning." I paused, my coffee cup halfway to my lips. "Oh, what about?" He sighed deeply. "They're upset about what happened last night. They said your comments were disrespectful." I let out a small laugh. "Disrespectful?" I repeated. "Did they mention how they disrespected me first?" "They don't see it that way," Marcus admitted quietly. "They think you overreacted, that you embarrassed them." There it was, the typical defense of people who mistake confrontation for rudeness. I stayed calm. "And what do you think, Marcus?" He hesitated. "I think you were right, Mom, but they don't understand you. They don't see what I see." His voice broke a little. I could tell he was torn between the woman he loved and the mother who raised him. My heart softened. "Marcus, listen to me," I said gently. "You don't need to choose sides. Just remember who you are and what kind of man you want to be. Respect everyone, but don't let anyone demand your silence." He didn't answer right away. I could hear his breathing, the weight of everything pressing on his chest. "Simone's really upset," he finally said. "She feels caught in the middle." "I understand," I replied. "She's living between two worlds, the one she was born into and the one she's building with you. That's never easy." We talked for a few more minutes before hanging up, but after I put the phone down, I couldn't stop thinking. I'd seen enough families destroyed by pride and ego. I didn't want that for Marcus. That night, I sat by the window watching the city lights blink in the dark. I knew Veronica and Franklin weren't finished. People like them rarely let go of control. They'd come back not with kindness, but with something sharper, and I was right. Because 2 days later, I received an invitation that would turn tension into open war. 2 days later, the envelope arrived. Elegant cream paper, gold lettering, and the faint scent of perfume that screamed money. It wasn't just an invitation, it was a message. Inside, I found a card that read, "Dinner at the Veron's residence. Saturday, 7 p.m. Family only." My first instinct was to decline. I had already endured one dinner that ended in quiet humiliation. But something inside me whispered, "Go." Not to prove anything, but to understand what kind of people my son was marrying into. Saturday came quickly. I wore a simple navy blue dress, modest but strong. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about showing up as myself. When I arrived, the house stood like a fortress of glass and marble, beautiful on the outside, cold within. Veronica greeted me at the door with that perfect smile that never reached her eyes. "So lovely to see you again," she said smoothly. Franklin appeared behind her, holding a glass of scotch. "We're glad you could make it," he added, his tone as stiff as his posture. Marcus and Simone were already seated in the grand dining hall. The table looked like something out of a magazine. Candles, roses in silver trays. But the air, it was heavy. Too heavy. Dinner began quietly. Small talk about weather, business, and travel. Then, as the plates were cleared, Franklin leaned back and said, "We've been thinking a lot about the future. About Marcus and Simone's life after marriage." I nodded politely. "That's understandable," he continued. "We want to ensure they start off strong, financially, socially, and reputationally, which means, naturally, surrounding themselves with the right kind of people." There it was, the poison hidden beneath courtesy, Veronica added. "We've even been looking into clubs and communities that would help them network properly. But you know how some circles can be selective." She glanced at me meaningfully. I knew exactly what she meant. They were drawing boundaries again, and this time, they wanted Marcus on their side of the line. I looked directly at her. "Selective circles can be very lonely," I said softly, "especially when they value image more than integrity." Simone's eyes flickered. Marcus's hand tightened around his fork, and for the first time, Franklin's mask slipped, just a little. What happened next turned that polite dinner into a battlefield and exposed the one secret. Veronica never wanted anyone to know. The tension at the table was palpable. Every smile felt forced, every compliment a veiled challenge. I watched Veronica carefully, the way she tilted her head, measuring my reactions like a chess opponent sizing up her next move. Franklin, though quieter than usual, radiated the same cold authority, the kind that suffocates anyone who dares to disagree. Then, Marcus finally spoke, his voice steady but his eyes intense. Mom already knows who we are dealing with. She's seen it before. A sharp gasp escaped Veronica's lips, her composure cracking for just a fraction of a second. Franklin cleared his throat, but the tension lingered. Simone reached for Marcus's hand under the table. I could feel the shift. They were afraid, and for the first time their fear wasn't of us, but of themselves. I leaned forward slightly. You see, I said softly, it isn't about appearances, nor about money. It's about honesty. It's about knowing who someone really is, without masks, without pretensions. And sometimes, the truth is brutal. Veronica's hand trembled as she set down her glass. She opened her mouth, closed it, and tried again. What do you mean? I let the silence stretch, letting every word sink into the room. I mean, I continued, that wealth does not equal worth. Power does not equal respect. You measure everything by what you have, and nothing by who you are. The room went silent. Even the chandelier above us seemed to dim under the weight of the words. Simone's eyes glistened. Marcus's jaw clenched, and for a moment, I saw Veronica and Franklin as they truly were. Two people trapped by their own illusions, terrified of anyone who could see past them. Franklin finally broke the silence, his voice sharp and defensive. You think you're better than us? I shook my head. I'm not better. I just refuse to be less. That tiny statement shifted something in the room. The air, thick with superiority and judgment, began to crack. Veronica looked away, unable to meet my eyes. Franklin's scowl faltered. Marcus squeezed Simone's hand, and I knew they felt the power of truth standing in front of them. And just when it seemed the night couldn't get more tense, a single revelation would shatter their carefully constructed world and change the course of our lives forever. Veronica's eyes finally met mine, a mixture of disbelief and something almost like fear flickering in them. You planned this? She whispered, voice trembling. I didn't flinch. I didn't plan humiliation. I planned to see reality. Franklin's fingers drummed against the table, irritation barely masking the confusion in his eyes. Reality? He asked, his tone sharp but uncertain. Yes, I said. The truth about how you treat people. The truth about how far pride and money can blind someone. You think wealth protects you, gives you power, and makes you untouchable, but it doesn't. Not when people see you for who you really are. Simone squeezed, Marcus's hand tighter, her knuckles white. I could see her struggling to reconcile what she'd been taught with what she was witnessing now. Marcus, on the other hand, looked calm, his gaze steady, almost proud. Veronica's lips quivered. You think you're teaching her something? I'm not teaching her anything, I said softly, my voice calm but firm. She's learning herself. You see, real lessons aren't given, they are experienced. You've spent years trying to control her world, to dictate her choices, and to ensure she never questions you. And for what? To create fear, obedience, blind loyalty? That is not love. A bitter silence fell. Franklin opened his mouth to argue, but Marcus spoke first. Enough. We're done listening to excuses. The words hit harder than any slap. Veronica's jaw tightened, and Franklin's eyes darted around the table as if looking for an escape. Simone finally spoke, her voice trembling but clear. I understand now. I understand that love isn't measured in wealth or obedience. I will choose differently. I will be better. And I will not allow fear or guilt to dictate my life. Veronica gasped. Franklin's face turned red, and for a moment, the air was thick with tension so dense, it felt like it could crush us all. I watched them, not with anger, but with a quiet satisfaction. The facade was crumbling, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. I leaned back slightly, letting my words settle. Tonight you saw who you are, not who you pretend to be, and now the choice is yours. Do you change, or do you continue living in a world of illusions? And just as they realized the weight of their own reflection, an unexpected move from Simone would shake their world even further, revealing secrets none of us could have predicted. Simone's eyes met mine, steady now, no longer wavering. I can't let this go, she said, voice low but determined. I won't let their behavior define me or our future. Marcus, I want you to see the truth too. Mom, I want to apologize. Not just for me, but for them. Her words were simple, yet they carried a weight stronger than anything Veronica or Franklin could ever muster. It was raw and honest, and it cut deeper than confrontation. Marcus nodded, his hand still in hers. Simone, I've seen it. I understand now. You don't have to explain more than you feel ready to. This is a start. Veronica flinched at his calm, measured voice. Franklin's pride tightened his chest like a vice. They had never expected this. They had expected tears, excuses, and subservience, not acknowledgement. Not courage and not truth. Simone continued. I stayed silent for too long because I didn't want to disappoint you. Or seem ungrateful. But I realize now that pretending to agree with cruelty isn't respect. It's complicity, and I refuse to participate in that. Anymore, I watched the transformation in her, a young woman, realizing her own strength. It reminded me of the countless times I had fought silently, shaping Marcus into the man he is today, teaching him resilience, patience, and integrity without showing the cards. I held. Veronica's voice broke as she tried to interrupt. You can't just decide to disrespect your parents? Disrespect? Simone's voice was firmer now, stronger. I am not disrespecting. I am standing up for the truth. I am defining the boundaries of my life, something you never let me do before. And Marcus supports me. We will define our lives together, not according to your standards, but according to what is right, just, and fair. Franklin's hand clenched the table. This is outrageous. You will regret this. I leaned forward slightly, my calm demeanor a stark contrast to their panic. Regret comes only when you compromise your soul. You cannot force someone to live in fear, to bend to your image of success. You can only control your own actions, and tonight you have lost the right to judge them. Simone exhaled, her shoulders relaxing slightly. Marcus squeezed her hand. This is the beginning, not an end. We have to keep standing together, but also with compassion, even when they fail to understand. A heavy silence settled over the table. Veronica and Franklin were speechless, and yet, the tension wasn't fear, it was realization. For the first time, they had confronted the consequences of their pride and control, and as the night drew to a close, Simone made a choice that none of us expected, a decision that would not only shock her parents but would also redefine her entire relationship with Marcus and the life they were about to build together. The following days were quiet but heavy with reflection. Simone and Marcus came to see me again, this time together. They spoke in whispers at first, like two people cautiously exploring a fragile bridge. Mother-in-law, Simone began, her hands folded in her lap. We've set our boundaries. It's not easy. I felt the pull of guilt, the old habit of pleasing, of silencing myself. But we did it. We told them clearly what is acceptable and what isn't. And Mom, it felt liberating. Marcus nodded, pride softening the tension in his face. It was uncomfortable, and yes, there was anger, maybe even hurt. But it was necessary. For us, for our future, for honesty in our lives. I reached out and placed my hand over Simone's. That is the essence of strength, I said. It isn't loud or forceful. It isn't vindictive. It's knowing your worth, protecting your peace, and teaching others how to treat you. Calmly, firmly, unapologetically, Simone's eyes glimmered. I saw how my parents reacted. Mom, how they tried to twist our words, to intimidate us with money, with control. But for the first time, I didn't flinch. I didn't apologize for existing. I didn't let their expectations rule me. I felt alive. I felt free. Freedom. That word lingered in the room, heavier than anything Veronica or Franklin could have offered with their wealth. I knew that feeling intimately. The moment when you step out from under a shadow, when silence transforms into your own voice. Marcus smiled faintly. I never realized how much I had absorbed from them. The habits, the fear, the need to appease. But seeing you act, Mom, I understood that true power isn't in control or wealth. It's in integrity, in living authentically, Simone nodded. And I want to live that way. Mom, I want to learn how to face life without fear, without needing to impress, without measuring myself by someone else's scale. I placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Then you've already begun. You've chosen your path. The rest is practice, consistency, patience, and self-reflection. You will stumble, you will falter, but you will rise stronger, more certain. For a long moment we sat in silence, listening to the distant hum of the city, feeling the weight of past burdens slowly lift. The lesson wasn't in revenge. It wasn't in proving anything to Veronica or Franklin. It was in reclaiming life, claiming dignity, and choosing love over fear. And just when I thought peace had settled fully, an unexpected message arrived. A note that would challenge everything Simone and Marcus had just established and force them to confront the remnants of control they hadn't anticipated. That evening, as I was settling into my small, familiar apartment, my phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Simone. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't expecting contact so soon after our last conversation. "Mother-in-law," the message read. "Something just happened. My parents, they sent a lawyer. They're trying to force us to change our decisions, to bend the boundaries we set. They want Marcus to reconsider, to take their side. I don't know what to do." I took a deep breath and sat down, letting the weight of her words sink in. This wasn't surprising. Veronica and Franklin had always been clever in their cruelty and patient in their manipulation. But I could sense Simone's fear, her uncertainty. She needed guidance and reassurance that standing firm wouldn't mean losing herself. I called her immediately. "Simone," I said, my voice calm and steady, "listen to me carefully. What they are doing is predictable. Control, intimidation, and threats. But remember, this is about you and Marcus. Your life together, not them. You have every right to enforce the boundaries you set. No lawyer, no threat. No inheritance should dictate your peace." Her voice trembled. But there was determination beneath it. "I know, but they're relentless. I feel like I'm being pulled back into that old cycle. I don't want to fight them, Mom, but I also don't want to lose myself." I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes briefly. "Then fight, not with anger, not with force, but with clarity. Repeat what you've already said, calmly, consistently, and never apologize for your existence. That is your strongest weapon, your integrity, your truth." Marcus joined her on the line, his voice stronger now. "We will do it together. Mom, I've realized I can't let their wealth dictate our lives. Our decisions, our love, our peace, that's ours, and we're not afraid anymore." I smiled, pride swelling quietly in my chest. "Exactly. You've learned the most important lesson early. Money can buy things, but it cannot buy dignity, respect, or peace. Those are earned, and they are yours to protect." We ended the call, and I felt a quiet satisfaction. The storm wasn't over, not by a long shot. But Simone and Marcus had discovered something more powerful than wealth: resilience, awareness, and courage. They had seen firsthand that the world could be harsh, but they also knew that standing firm in truth was liberating. And just when I thought the night would pass quietly, another call came through, this time from an unexpected source. Someone who would reveal secrets that even Simone and Marcus had never imagined. Their real test, it seemed, was its only beginning. Late that night, my phone buzzed again. A number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. "Is this Mrs. Harris?" a cautious voice asked. "Yes," I replied slowly. "Who's calling?" "My name is Elena. I used to work for Veronica and Franklin. I've seen things they've never told anyone, and I think you should know. I couldn't speak before, but now. You need to know the truth about their wealth, about their manipulations." My heart tightened. I had known their arrogance and cruelty, but I hadn't expected secrets buried so deep, so dark. "Go on," I said, settling back into my chair. Elena explained that Franklin's businesses were built on deals that exploited others, cutting corners in ways the public never knew. Veronica, she said, had carefully cultivated a persona of generosity while privately manipulating her friends and family to maintain power. "They've done things, terrible things, to people who trusted them," Elena whispered. I listened in silence, processing. I wasn't surprised. Cruelty often hides behind a polished facade. But this confirmation made it real, undeniable. They weren't just flawed or controlling. They were willing to hurt others, to keep their illusion of superiority. "Why tell me now?" I asked. "Because you've exposed their hypocrisy. Simone's courage has shaken them. They will try to retaliate in ways that aren't obvious. You need to protect yourself, protect Marcus, and protect her. And they will do everything in their power to regain control." I thanked her, assuring her I would handle it with discretion. Then I hung up, the room silent except for the faint hum of the city outside. I realized that Veronica and Franklin's wealth was a weapon, Yes, but their true vulnerability was revealed. The fragile foundation of greed, and fear beneath all their possessions. Thought of Simone and Marcus. They were stepping into this battlefield, unaware of some of the dangers, yet armed with honesty and boundaries, and I understood that my role, my presence, was not to fight their battles, but to guide them towards strength, to teach them how to live with dignity and how to resist manipulation without losing their hearts. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, money can buy influence, it can buy comfort, and it can even buy loyalty from the weak, but it cannot buy truth. It cannot buy the courage to be kind, to be real, and that always is the greatest wealth. I didn't sleep much that night. I knew the coming days would test Marcus, Simone, and even me. But deep down I felt ready. Because sometimes the hardest battles teach the most valuable lessons, and the ones who endure them come out stronger than they ever imagined. The next morning, sunlight spilled through my window, golden and forgiving. I made my usual coffee, inhaling the familiar warmth and comfort, yet my mind was restless. Last night's call lingered, a reminder that some battles are never fully over, no matter how clearly you draw your boundaries. Marcus arrived shortly after, unannounced, knocking softly. I opened the door to see his eyes tired but resolute. He didn't speak immediately. He simply handed me a folded envelope. "I found this in my office," he said quietly. "It's from Veronica. She tried to manipulate Simone again, sending threats disguised as advice. I didn't open it. I wanted you to see it first." I nodded, taking the envelope and glancing at it. Even in their polished handwriting, the venom was palpable, but I felt no fear. Only clarity. Money and status could intimidate, but it could never corrupt what was honest, what was true. Marcus lingered, shifting from one foot to the other. "Mom, I don't know if I have the courage to face them again. Simone and we're trying, but every time they step into our lives, it feels like walking through fire." I placed a hand on his shoulder, warm and firm. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, son. It's standing tall even when you tremble, speaking truth when silence is easier. You're already showing it every time you refuse to bow to their control, every time you choose love over approval, and honesty over appearances." He exhaled, relief mixing with lingering doubt. "Sometimes I feel like I'm fighting a war I never signed up for." "You are," I said gently, "but the war isn't against them. The war is against compromise, against allowing fear or greed to dictate who you become. You and Simone are fighting for authenticity, for respect, for peace. That is a battle worth every struggle." We sat together in silence, the weight of shared understanding grounding us. Outside, life moved with indifferent rhythm, children laughing, neighbors greeting each other, and birds circling above. I realized then that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to maintain your center amidst it. "Mom," Marcus said softly, finally breaking the quiet, "thank you. For everything. For teaching me strength without cruelty. For showing me dignity without arrogance. For proving that being rich doesn't mean owning people. It means owning yourself," I smiled, brushing a hand across his cheek. "You're stronger than you know. And someday, when you face similar challenges, you'll remember tonight. You'll remember that honesty, humility, and love are always the richest forms of power." Marcus left shortly after, leaving me alone in the sunlight-filled apartment. I looked out the window and thought about the path ahead. Veronica and Franklin still lingered in our lives, but I knew one thing for certain. No amount of money could ever match the strength, integrity, and freedom that we had already claimed, and that realization, more than anything, would guide us through the coming storms. That evening, I sat by my window once again, watching the city lights flicker on one by one, like tiny reminders that life keeps moving, with or without approval, with or without wealth. The quiet of my apartment felt different now, not lonely, but full of lessons, of victories unseen, of peace earned. Marcus called, as he often did after long days. "Mom," he said, voice soft, "Simone and I are planning our first weekend alone, away from everyone. We want to focus on us, on the life we're building together." I smiled, warmth filling my chest. "That's perfect. Build your foundation first. Everything else can wait." We talked for a while longer, about small things, coffee, walks, shared jokes. But beneath those ordinary words, there was a quiet triumph. We had survived arrogance, manipulation, and fear disguised as love. We had chosen freedom over approval, authenticity over appearances. And in doing so, we had built something stronger than any fortune: integrity, respect, and truth. Later, I thought about Veronica and Franklin one last time. They were still trapped, I realized. Trapped by their own beliefs, by the idea that money defines worth and that control equals love. And I felt no anger, no sadness, only gratitude. Gratitude that I had escaped that mindset, that I could live fully without compromise, and that I could be a mother who raised a son to value character over currency. I poured myself a cup of tea, old and familiar, and watched the sun sink below the horizon. Colors melted into the sky, soft and forgiving. In that light, I understood something fundamental. Wealth is not counted in dollars, in jewels, or in properties. True wealth is measured in peace, in honesty, and in love freely given and freely received. That was mine, and that, I thought, was more than enough. As I put down my cup, my phone buzzed once more. A message from Marcus. "Mom, thank you for showing us the way, for giving us truth when we needed it most." "We love you," I replied simply. "I love you, too, always." And I set my phone aside, watching the city embrace the night, content, free, and whole. Life lesson. True power is silent. Kindness is free and peace is priceless. Remember that when the world tries to teach you otherwise, if this story touched your heart, inspired you, or reminded you of what truly matters, make sure to subscribe for more life-changing stories. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear how you interpret this journey. Real wealth isn't in your bank account, but in the truth you live by. See you in the next story with love and respect.